So, in talking about some real estate news, as we were mentioning that everything is ever changing and evolving, you were mentioning something earlier today that I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, we are looking at. So first off, we have a new mayor, Corey
In
O'Connor,
the city of
in the
Pittsburgh.
city of Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Yes, new mayor as of January. And when we talk about real estate news and we talk about exciting things that are happening in the industry, especially here in Pittsburgh, because for those of you who might not be familiar with Pittsburgh, all eyes are on us from
Mhm.
a national stage.
Yes.
We were just listed as like top 8 in the country
We make
for
a lot of those top 10 lists,
100%.
affordable living
Yeah,
and things
absolutely.
like that.
One I thought was really interesting at the end of maybe it was like middle of 2025 is that we were the 8th safest city from like weather related events,
Hmm,
which I thought was interesting.
that is interesting.
But yeah, we're always topping these charts, most affordable, best for first time home buyers, best for
Yes.
business travel. I think we made that list beginning of this
Mhm.
year, end of last year, like number 9 on that list. So we're Pittsburgh is always being talked about, which is why I think it's such a hot market. But
Mhm.
the really interesting thing when you're looking at news is development, right? And we see so much development happening, but development taking so long. And with the new mayor, with Corey O'Connor, his first executive order, this is what we were talking about. His first executive order as mayor was to try to find a way to streamline the permitting process because anyone who is in development knows the permitting process takes an exorbitant amount of time, far too long. I think that the city itself said, I think the quote was, it takes 8 months, but from experience, it takes 18 months to 2 years for certain things to really come into fruition. And it shouldn't be that way. And the mayor feels that way as well. So it's going to be really interesting. What the executive order did was basically say, hey, look, to these departments, I think it was mobility, I think DOMI, I think it was Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, definitely city planning. I know that it was PLI, permitting,
Mhm.
licensing, and inspections. And I believe zoning too. Don't quote me on that one, but there's a great article on Trib Live about it. But essentially, he gave those departments 60 days to find out the best ways to streamline this process. Now, the mayor has said he'd love to see it take 4 weeks. I would love to see it take 4 weeks. I think we've got to crawl before we walk and walk before we run. But I am really excited to see where this goes because if this does get streamlined and if the permitting process does take considerably less time, I think you're going to see a really great resurgence of Pittsburgh, another renaissance of Pittsburgh, because we have a bunch of development happening here, but not in a speedy way,
Mhm.
And though I understand controlling growth is important, right? Because one of the great things about Pittsburgh is that I always joke and say the end of the world can happen and Pittsburgh will feel it 10 years later, right? It's always been a very stable market. So I understand
Mhm.
controlling the growth of a city is very important, especially from an infrastructure perspective, right?
Certainly,
Like,
especially an older city
an
like
older city.
Pittsburgh. Mhm.
Exactly. So I understand that side of it, but we also have people who need housing. We also have people who need affordable housing. We have more projects that we would love to see go downtown to revitalize downtown again. So if this goes through and when, knock on wood, that this goes through and they figure a way to streamline this, I think that's going to be, in my eyes, that's the biggest news happening in Pittsburgh because
Mhm.
we can top all of the charts and we can do all of that. But if you can't get a shovel in the ground, you're dead in the water,
Yeah, I
So I'm
think
very
that's
excited about it.
I think that's a great point, and I think from a clientele perspective too, we've seen so many folks go to those surrounding areas and counties to build because of their frustration with this
Absolutely.
process.
Absolutely.
And what we have the land, we have the neighborhoods that need some revitalization. We have
Hmm.
beautiful riverfront property
Hmm.
that needs put to its highest and best use.
Hmm.
And I think it's exciting that we do have a mayor that is, you know, being
Understands it.
very present and wants to understand everyone's perspective and find a great way, hopefully, to collaborate those perspectives and make a process that is reasonable
Yep.
and healthy for our city's growth.
Absolutely.
So, yes, you could speak to it firsthand. I know you've been dealing with a project yourself. That sounds
Yes.
exciting.
Yes, yes. Thanks for the plug. Love that. No, we've been working on a 29 unit apartment complex, a little development, actually in Uptown, where you're seeing a lot of development and revitalization happening there. And we experienced all of the things that other developers have been experiencing along the way, delays in permitting or
Mhm.
occupancy delays based off of trying. I mean, even if they have a skeleton crew, to come in and inspect, there's it's taken way longer than it should have based on the logistics and how things move within the city. And so seeing that firsthand, in my first, I'll say, foray into development and seeing something from the ground up where I wasn't just
Mhm.
working
Right.
for a client, where I'm part of. I look at this as like an education process,
Sure.
right? Like where I got to see this from the ground up, and I learned a side of development that I had not ever been a part of before. And not that I was swinging a hammer by any means. No one would want to live there if I was building it. But it's one of those things where until you're in it, just like the association work, until
Mhm.
you're in it, you don't really realize how much goes into it. And from the outside, when you're looking, if you have no involvement with the development, like for example, mine's on the corner of Fifth Avenue and Pride Street in
Mhm.
Uptown, actually, which is where we're recording, we're
Yes.
recording in Uptown. Um, when you're looking at a project like that from the outside, you might say, oh my gosh, it's been sitting there forever. I have no idea, and then the rumor mill, I mean, like people just start
Sure.
talking. They don't realize that we might be, though we're building on the inside, don't realize that we can't do one more thing without
Right.
having the last thing permitted and approved.
Exactly.
You
One
know
thing
E-
sort of hinges on another,
exactly.
and it can cost a lot of money too, those delays.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you think about when a project is delayed, if you're using financing or if you're leveraging, right, to get the project done, if there's a construction loan, et cetera, the bank doesn't care if you're delayed. Well, they do care, but as long as they're getting paid, the bank wants their check every month and they want their payment. And when you underwrite a project, like from a development standpoint and from a real estate perspective, when you underwrite a project, you don't underwrite 2 years worth of delays. You are underwriting, like you have a little give or take of delays, but you're underwriting something that is going to be making money based on your timeline, your schedule, and all of that when you open and when you're going to have your first rent check and all of that. You don't you shouldn't have to factor in 2 years worth of delays or delays on occupancy permits when the building is already complete, waiting for someone to come out. And so watching that firsthand and living that firsthand
Mhm.
to see, and like we've been open since December. We've had great activity, and
Congrats.
thank you, thanks. It's been super exciting, but it's been a lot of hurry up and wait, and that's what we've experienced. So to see the mayor's first executive order be about the permitting process, we aren't the only ones.
Sure.
And I think that there was kind of like some peace in knowing that future developments might not have the same issues that we had going through this process. And then, I mean, there have been several articles that have been written over the last year or two that talked about the permitting delays and how many projects just in Uptown alone were
Mm.
delayed. Like ours
Wow.
wasn't one of them that was mentioned, but there were a few other ones. Then there's downtown, then there's Shady Side. I mean, there's so many delays in development, and some developers couldn't hang in there any longer,
That's
and
a
it does
shame.
force people out because it is a financial burden. It's certainly it's an issue that I'm so happy the city is taking a look at because
Yeah.
it's been far too long and it takes far too long. So kudos to you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank
Wishing
you.
the best of luck.
It's very encouraging, and I
Hmm.
hope it will encourage other onlookers, developers to step in and say, wow, there's so much potential. Like I was saying, the riverfront property, south side,
Yep.
north side,
Yep.
downtown, there's such beautiful city neighborhoods and so unique to Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
What else exciting do you see going on in Uptown? There's a
Uptown.
lot of
Oh my gosh,
development.
there's so much development happening in Uptown. And, I'm a Duquesne University alum, undergrad and master's. So
Wow.
having lived in the South Side, gone to Duquesne for both of those chapters of my life, I feel like Uptown has been my home for so long because Duquesne is kind of nestled in there between the Bluff and
Yes.
Uptown. So to watch the development that's happening there, the new Live Nation venue, the F&B tower that just went up, they opened November, I think, of 24, right? So
Oh,
we're
wow.
seeing that kind of expansion into what they're calling the center district, but then also in Uptown and the Hill, you've got more shopping that's coming. You've got a new bus line that's coming down, new bus stop. So it's they're really trying to focus on revitalizing that area and helping to bring downtown and Oakland together through the Uptown community. Well, also like we don't have a grocery store. We have Moranti's, right? So we've got a little Italian grocery, which I love, but we don't really have a grocery store out there. So there's talks for a grocery store and office space and everything. So there's so much activity. So I'm so excited about living in Uptown and being in Uptown and seeing where that's gone because I mean I graduated. Oh gosh, I graduated college in '08. So to see that almost 20 years,
Yes.
you always wanted so much to happen in and around your campus, right?
And their
And
campus has expanded so
absolutely.
much. I've seen
Oh
it
yeah.
from the years I went there, and my family
Mm-hmm.
had gone there as well, and
Yeah.
it's great to see.
Absolutely. And, the funny thing was, as soon as I graduated, Duquesne started doing all of these renovations, and then I was like, okay, great. I'm going there for my master's at some point. And then I came back and I was like, oh, great. I get to use some of this. And then they did a whole nother round of renovations and expansions. And I was like, okay, so I just won't get to enjoy this
I know.
yet.
I
But,
know. I said the
maybe if I go
same
back for a
thing.
doctorate. Gosh,
I
no.
said the same thing. Their
Yeah.
housing and their facilities
Mm-hmm.
are really beautiful.
Yeah.
And their programming is expanded as well
Oh,
to
absolutely.
health and
Mm-hmm.
so many things in addition to
Yeah.
business and
They just did the
legal
School of
studies.
DO medicine, I
Yes.
think. Yeah.
Mhm.
That just opened not too long ago, within the last year or two, I think. So super
That's
exciting
great.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have to come visit you at your building.
Come on
One
down.
of our
Maybe,
on-site
yes,
tours.
love
Yes,
that.
that would
I
be
think we're
great.
gonna I think we're gonna be doing one with the Realtors Association probably soon.
Great.
So maybe we'll bring a camera. I
Yes,
don't know.
I think we should.
Yeah,
We'll do a follow-up.
I would love
That's
that.
great.
Yeah.
That's great to see all the exciting activity in
Yeah,
Pittsburgh.
we're fortunate that we live in an area and that Pittsburgh is so prime for redevelopment opportunity that is accessible to everybody. I think is the best way, to kind of to say that because they're making sure that programs are in place that people aren't getting pushed out of their neighborhoods. So I
Yeah.
think that's really important too.
And I think our city is so resilient as well.
Oh,
I
for
mean, we
sure.
have seen so many iterations of these key neighborhoods. For example, South Side, in the
Hmm.
80s, there was sort of what you'd call, a shift in the market and things were closing up. And we've seen some of that in the past couple of years. But we've also seen this resiliency, this resurgence of, well, one business closed, but a new one opened, and it's of a
Hmm.
different kind. And
Hmm.
there's still so many people dedicated to these community groups that either are from what I call the old school, that they knew how it was many years
Oh
ago,
yeah.
or were close like I was with their parents and grandparents' generation that feel like they were there through that history. And sort of blending that passion, that deep rooted passion, with some of the new market that you have to adjust and cater to as well. So we're sort of seeing those little resurgences in South Side and downtown, definitely on North Side with
Hmm.
that new development there in Uptown.
Yep,
And so it's very exciting.
it is.
One of the articles, I can't remember if it was for the Pennsylvania Association or something that we've collaborated on
Yeah.
many times
Yep.
together. Pittsburgh's affordability and housing market always again gets those top lists, but I think what supports that is the affordable living aspect, not
Hmm.
just the price of the house, but the affordability of the community around it.
Yep.
And
Without a doubt.
that's sort of what you're seeing too
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
uptown area.
Absolutely. And when you talk about resiliency, I just think about the 90 neighborhoods that make up Pittsburgh
Yes.
and how they each have their own character and, their own identity. And we're a strong people. We're the Steel City for a reason,
Yeah.
And so I think that when you talk about resiliency and you talk about people fighting for identity and keeping identity and keeping the neighborhoods their neighborhoods, I think it comes down to the heart of the city is our people, and how well they focus on maintaining their identity for each of these neighborhoods. And that in and of itself brings out the resiliency, right? They don't want a community to fail. They don't want to see stores close up. But if there is, they're helping to find something else to fill its spot. So it's been really fun to watch what Pittsburgh has gone through over the last 5 or 6 years from the pandemic, right? Because I think we have banded together in a way that many other cities haven't. When you look at the 50 largest metros, how communities have come together, great, but Pittsburgh has taken it a step further, and they have refused to let up on the gas to keep being at the top of the list. So I'm so proud to be a Pittsburgher and to see what's been happening. So
I think
yeah.
that's great. I think our people's roots go very deep, and so they
for
care
sure.
very much.
Yep.
And like yourself, I lived away for many years and came back, and so we have a different perspective because we've experienced living and working in other cities. So we have something to compare it to.
Absolutely.
And can really speak to that uniqueness
Absolutely.
that we have.
Yeah. No, it's been Pittsburgh proud, baby. That's
Yeah.
it.